Hey guys, welcome back to Mini Urban Farm, a channel about gardening and homesteading in the suburbs. Today I'm really excited because I am showing you the first seeds that have popped up in the fall garden. Now this is a completely brand new gardening space. This is the first time I'm gardening in this space. We just set up this garden and we already have little baby seedlings behind us. So I'm going to take you through and show you everything that's growing. Basically everything that I planted just over a week ago has already sprung up through the soil. I'm really excited to show you guys exactly what's growing, and I thought it was really important to make this video because I mean, if you're just a beginner gardener, or even if you're an experienced gardener and you're ripping out, your season, your garden from last season, sometimes we think, myself included, that, it's gonna take a while to get that next garden going, right? So basically, every season I rip up my garden and then I have to wait for new seeds to come up, and I try to overlap them a bit, but sometimes, you just get impatient. I'm not a very patient person at all, so I definitely don't like to wait. However, I planted these seeds just over a week ago. It was Saturday and now today is Monday, so a weekend, a couple days, and everything is already growing. And the thing is that these seeds have been germinated, right? They didn't just germinate today. They didn't get like this big right behind me just today. So after about, I think it was 3 days is when I first started seeing the very first seeds popping their heads up through the soil. It does not take long at all to grow a garden. So let me turn around the camera and show you guys exactly what's growing. Alright, so I'm going to start over here at this side, work my way all the way across those 30 feet. You can see the water hose from this morning's watering. I just water every single day basically because I don't have any sort of irrigation or anything set up. So these seeds have popped up. You can see a lot of, let's adjust that here. So you can see a lot of these little baby seeds. Now these are actually red mustard seeds. I grow this every season. I really love the taste, and I just kind of sprinkled them all through, which is why they're not really even. There's some, more over there, some over here. These seeds, they're really tiny. All you have to do is just scatter them all throughout the dirt. You don't even cover them, and then they just pop up like this. I think these were actually one of the very first ones to come up. Now these over here are cherry tomatoes. These are supposed to be really prolific. You can see I did plant them. I think that's probably about 7 or 8 inches apart from each other, and I planted a whole clump of them. So basically I just told, well actually Alan's daughter helped me plant them, or one of Alan's daughters helped me plant them. So I just told her to sprinkle 3 or 4 seeds in each hole. I think she sprinkled maybe 5 or 6 of them, and then I'll just go through and thin them once they start getting a little bit bigger. But you can see that even though it hasn't been that long, they already have their true leaves popping up. So once they have 2 or 3 sets of true leaves, I'll go ahead and kind of thin them and give them more room to grow. And these ones over here are doing really, really well as well. And then they're planted along the back here so that they can just trellis. Over here, we have a lot of tiny little lemon basil. So these were ones that I seed saved from last season. I made a whole video on how to seed save basil. If you're interested, I'll leave that somewhere in the description. And basically I just sprinkled the whole thing, pretty much everywhere. So there's a whole bunch of them popping up. These are pole beans. These are going to be yellow Marvel of Venice pole beans. I have grown these last season and they did pretty well. They actually popped up one of the very first things because beans grow ridiculously fast, so you can see how big they are. Now they're sitting over here in partial shade, mainly because of this giant tree, well not giant, this tree here. I probably will end up getting rid of some of these branches at some point in time because I do notice that these leaves and branches end up a lot in the raised bed, but for right now I don't think it's really harming anything, so I'll leave that alone. And then you come over here to the other side of this tree, you have some more Marvel of Venice pole beans. And then this is something I'm growing for the very first time. This is chamomile. Now I've actually never grown chamomile and I love chamomile teas, so that's something we just kind of sprinkled on the surface, and that was one of the very first things. I know I keep saying one of the very first things that popped up, but a lot of these things popped up within 2 or 3 days. I think this might have actually been the first one. Over here we have butternut squash. I definitely will be thinning these. I will probably just clip them or maybe try to uproot them and give away some of the extras because they're definitely way too close together. So they're supposed to be in individual square feet. Now they're on the trellis as well, so they'll be able to trellis up. But yeah, I maybe went a little overboard with the butternut squash here. They definitely need to be thinned out a little bit. And then over here it looks kind of empty, but you can see tiny little greens popping up. Now this is actually parsley. I just sprinkled on the top. I believe this is going to be Yeah, flat leaf parsley. So my Italian giant flat leaf parsley, and you can see like some of the leaves from the trees just kind of end up in here, which I think is fine for now. But this is actually, like you can see right here, they're just starting to come up. Now parsley, in my experience, has always taken about 10 days or so to come up through the soil, so I'm not really too worried about it. I have sprinkled parsley in a couple places, and then once it does pop up, then it grows really fast. You can see some of my arugula has actually made it a little bit further away from where I planted it. I planted approximately 4 square feet of arugula. Arugula is really great because you can harvest for baby greens, so in less than a month now I'll be able to actually eat arugula. I'm not gonna have to wait a long time for it, which is great because I'm not a patient person like I already mentioned. These are actually Roma tomatoes. Now there's, like I said, there's a whole bunch of them in these little areas here, but I'm gonna have to go in and thin them because they will need quite a bit of space. And I did just trellis them, or I'm going to trellis them up against the fence. So generally I would stake my Roma tomatoes like I have in previous seasons. It just makes it easier. I do the floor to weave generally, but I don't really have enough space for the floor to weave if I wanted to like get all of my crops in, and I had tons of things this season that I wanted to plant. So I have grown them like this up against a trellis before. Let's see how it works out this time. But you can see some of my like arugula over here has kind of like made its way, and I know I had sprinkled maybe some basil and stuff interplanted, so we'll see what pops up. Alright, so I did want to say that this season I'm going to try to be a little bit more permaculture-ish. It's something that I've kind of been gravitating towards slowly each season that passes. Now I do garden 100% organically. I am very proud to say that now because I didn't used to, but it has taken a long time to get to that, and something I'm really proud of. One of my gardening goals actually, and if you haven't seen that video on my gardening goals, I have a blog post on it. I talk all about my gardening goals and things that I have accomplished over the years and how I have reached those and all of that, so I'll leave the link in the description somewhere. But I mean, one of the things that I am striving towards right now is being more permaculture-ish. I don't know how to say that, but you know, just interplanting a lot of different things. If something, you know, ends up growing out of place, or if it's a volunteer, I've been working towards just leaving it, and actually last season that worked out really great. I had a lot of volunteer parsley interplanted between my tomatoes that sprung up, and I just left it and they did so well together. So it's just something I'm working on personally, leaving some of the things, you know, if my arugula strays a little bit with the wind, or you know, birds pick it up or whatever it is, just kind of leaving it, as long as it's not going to crowd out another plant, and as long as it's going to do well where it is, you know, that I can tell. I've been working on just leaving them and just, you know, kind of allowing nature to take its course a little bit, hopefully control some of the pests, and you know, just better for companion planting overall. Alright, so in this bed, well, it's all one bed, but they're kind of like interconnected with these poles here. So in this side we have basil. This is actually Genovese basil. You can tell it actually looks the exact same as the lemon basil. Most basils do when they're first popping up. And then you can also see, like, I think this is either this little plant here, this is either arugula or it's kale. They kind of look the same when they're first starting out. So you can see, like, my arugula was here, so the wind might have just picked it up, and then I have kale planted over there somewhere. So either one, we'll see which one it ends up being. And I have tomatoes here. These are more of my Roma tomatoes. These ones I think I spaced out a little bit better, so hopefully we'll get a better crop on these as well. And then moving on, right, all of this is basil, so I will end up probably having to thin out some of this basil, but we'll see how it goes, if it, you know, kind of smothers each other out. This is kale. So my kale, it's the same thing. I just sprinkled it along the surface, didn't even bother covering it. And then right next to it is Swiss chard. Now this Swiss chard will definitely need to be thinned out, because what happens in Swiss chard seeds is the seeds themselves actually have multiple little seeds in them, like they're a clump of seeds, a seed cluster or whatever. And so what happens is, if you plant several of them, you get things like this, where, you know, you have like 15 of them all in a row. So you're definitely going to need to thin them out if you plant more than one of them in a hole, which I do. And then over here, there's like finishing up my kale. And then I have my bush beans. So these are a combination, I think it's like lake bush beans and jade bush beans. I think they probably grow pretty much the same. So this is kind of like just an entire row of bush beans, because we did really well on bush beans last season, and I'm just hoping to continue that. We still have bush beans in the freezer that we preserved from last season. And then the last thing over here, if you can find it, we have some cherry tomatoes. Now I think this is actually a little grass weed. but I'm not exactly sure. So I'm gonna leave it for now, and then I'm pretty sure. But when it ends up being that that's a grass weed, I'll just take it out. So we have a whole bunch of little cherry tomatoes. These are actually my pink bumblebee cherry tomatoes, so I cannot wait. I did plant a whole bunch of them, and basically this entire row here is pink bumblebee cherry tomatoes, so I'm really excited to see how those grow, and hopefully we'll get a whole bunch of them. Alright guys, so that is pretty much my mini 1 week garden tour. Now this is the beginning of our fall garden. Here in Central Florida we pretty much garden in 2 seasons. You have spring that runs from like March until basically the plants get fried or die out in the middle of summer because it is just so hot, and then again starting in mid-September, October, which runs until basically the next gardening season into March. Now these are not all the vegetables that I'm going to be growing the entire season. I will be succession planting radishes and root crops and carrots and things like that once some of these leafy greens get harvested, I guess, because I harvest them generally at about 30 days, and then whatever else gets ripped up will probably go to the chickens after that. But yeah, it's definitely not a long process if you want to get started. If you are starting a garden for the first time, just like I did my my garden bed build, my raised garden bed, just like I did my raised garden bed. If you watch that video, you saw that it really wasn't a super hard process to get it built. It took a couple days just because we didn't want to work in the hot sun at noon every single day. But for the most part, it wasn't a difficult process to do, to get this garden bed started. It's not a fancy garden beds by any means, but you can see how much food we are growing here and how quickly of a turnaround time we had. I mean, we planted out last week and we already have tons of seedlings growing. Basically, everything's already come up and we're only waiting for the parsley, but that takes around 10 days anyways. So we are definitely off to a great start here. Now, if you want to see more of our garden, our chickens, urban homesteading, all of that, we have a lot more videos coming up for fall gardening, so don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!